Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining in to our presentation this afternoon or this evening, our live stream on transforming your career, securing your ideal leadership job in 2025. So, with us today, I have my three colleagues, and I'm going to introduce them shortly. But I wanted to let you know that one of the things that we're going to be covering right at the top, is to talk about something that's very prescient, and that's the pending layoffs or the fear of layoffs that people are facing. People could be in a layoff right now, or thinking that they may be laid off, or just worried about it. And then we will go into some of the agenda items that we have on how to land your leadership role. They're very much aligned, but we'll start off from the perspective of how to respond or prepare for a layoff. So let me introduce my wonderful partners here today. First of all, I have Sophia Edwards. She's an executive career coach, certified HR professional, and LinkedIn early adopter who has coached thousands of professionals, helping many of them position themselves on the VP and executive role levels. Then we've got Edward, a powerhouse in coaching and creating best in class branding documents. Ed is also a judge and grader for the CPRW certification. He knows exactly what it takes to make hiring what it takes to make a decision maker notice you with your documents. And Linda Greenfield is a career coach who's also a LinkedIn strategist and an AI aficionado. I go to her if I have any questions. She's spent years helping high achieving professionals land the roles they deserve. And finally, myself, Faith, with over 20 years experience in marketing and sales and career and business coaching, with a distinct purpose of elevating women into leadership positions in their careers and their businesses. So we're really happy to be with you here today, and we hope that you will get what you need in order to be able to get a sense of calm and certainty in your own careers so that you can make wise decisions moving forward. So as I mentioned, we were going to talk about the layoff situation, preparing and responding. And maybe I could get Sophia to start off and with some ideas of how she's helping her clients right now and what she's saying to help them to really get a handle on this.
Absolutely. And Faith, I agree with you that preparing for or responding to a layoff uses many of the same skills as pursuing a leadership role, because you always want to have your branding materials up to date. You want to be magnifying your presence on LinkedIn as a thought leader, and you want to be networking, always networking, because you never know what could happen and what opportunities might arise, even if you're not looking. I think the important thing when you're being laid off is to be prepared, or you think you might be being laid off. Be prepared and be proactive. Don't consider it a bad day if you didn't get a job today, because as long as you're engaging in the activities that will ultimately lead to success, it's been a good day.
Yeah, that's so true. And I had something that just went out of my mind, so I'm going to move on to Linda. Linda, how would you add to that?
Oh, it's a really challenging time for everyone. So probably the first thing that I'd want to add, if you are thinking that you could be laid off, first start reading the room, really keeping up on what's going on in the company and the industry, just to see, is it more likely or is it just rampant reaction to what's going on in the broader economy. But if you're thinking there really is a possibility, to plan for it. And my first suggestion is to think about, if you were laid off, tomorrow, and you were locked out of your company email tomorrow, what would you need to do
Yeah.
today in terms of just keeping a contact list? There are some things that are owned by your company, not you, and to be careful of that. But in terms of, like Sophia, or the networking piece is crucial. Who do you know that's in that contact list that you might not have thought about? And, is there anything else in that email that you will be locked out of that you want to capture now?
Mm-hmm.
Can I jump in, Faith? Because you just made me think of something, Linda, which is so true. Keep copies of your performance reviews and your job descriptions. If you are not yet laid off, having all of those materials, which belong to you, is super important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a good idea in keeping all your job materials and everything else too, to document everything that's you've been accomplishing. I mean, you should have started that way back in your career, documenting. We think we're going to remember. We think that because, it seems so important to us right in the moment that we're going to remember. But a year from now, we won't remember all the details. And I can't tell you, I'm working with some laid off people right now, and the hardest thing for them to do is to remember the metrics or the data that's associated with the star stories that they want to be able to tell. So those things should be kept in a really nice, place that you can retrieve them and be able to go back to those metrics, because they're very important when you're showing results. Ed, what were you thinking?
I've got three things, and number three is inspired by what Linda just said when you were talking about LinkedIn. But make sure anything that you might access, all your resources, like your LinkedIn profile, are external to the company. Just think about how many job seekers have been let go and they used their company email address for their LinkedIn profile. That's number one, everything external. But there's two other things that are sort of related that I think are sort of new, than people take them for granted. So number one, to all you job seekers or anyone who's working at any company, actually, you are not indispensable. I have met several people, not just clients, but friends, who would say to me months before they were let go, first, well, there are rumors that there are going to be layoffs coming. And I'd say, well, make sure your resume is up to date. And these people all had something in common. Again, they thought they need me. One guy said to me, Ed, they're never going to let me go. I'm third level support. And both his wife and my wife would say to me, don't push back on him. Because if you do, he would get angry. Yeah. And you got to watch out. You're not indispensable. And the next thing is, once you recognize you're not indispensable, you need to work, as I like to say, from the inside out. Decide going ahead what type problems you want to solve, your skills, your qualifications for any job that you might want to solve the problems for, your personal traits, and I'm adding these days, your values.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do that before, because I think you'll all agree, the practical stuff, the resume and cover letter, that's going to flow, once you have an idea of what you want to do and if you know yourself.
Right. So true. We're going to open up for questions about layoffs in a couple of minutes. But one of the things I also wanted to mention about getting prepared is it's about your mindset. I think, Sophia, you alluded to this, that your mindset has to be, you have to really pay attention to your mindset and how you're thinking about things. And as Ed said, we're not indispensable. But so you want to open yourself up to thinking, what would I love to do next? if I were laid off? What is the thing, start thinking about things that you would have always wanted to do, but never had the opportunity to do. And that can help you to really open up your thinking
Mhm.
and do some journaling about it. Write about, what are some other occupations or things you could transition to, industries you've always wanted. Maybe you wanted to go into environmental things, things like that. So whatever you can dream about. Any other points, Sophia or Linda?
Absolutely. I was thinking that so often when people are laid off, their confidence takes a hit. If you were like the person Ed's referencing, that they can't live without me, but then they prove to you they can, I encourage my clients to remember that just because someone is not paying you today does not mean you don't have inherent market value. You have a wealth of expertise and experience that will make you a valued addition to any number of companies. That doesn't mean be cocky or arrogant, but be confident, know that you bring value to your next employer.
Right.
Absolutely. I to add on that, just the mental status and things that you go through if you are laid off, and just really taking some time to remind yourself that you are more than your job. And even if it's you're spend a lot of time there and it's really important to you and you're doing great work and all of that, it's when you think about your entire life, your job is one piece of it, and it doesn't define who you are through the course of your life. And as you go through this clarity phase where figuring out what to do next, that's part of those values. But how does the puzzle fit together? What are all the other things that are important to you? And to, I encourage to spend some time thinking about that. And kind of a tangent of that is I'm a big fan of, while you're working, to keep a journal of accomplishments, but also of kudos, of nice things that people have said to you or about you. And it can be really helpful, if you are laid off, just going back and saying, I've done some pretty good things here, and I have been recognized, even if I was just laid off. But having that to look back on, if you're having a bad day, if you're going in to ask for a raise or promotion, you're looking for material to add to your marketing documents, but kind of thinking about all of those, the bigger picture of you.
Yeah. I'm trying to see. I don't have a way of seeing if there are questions. Stephanie, are you seeing any questions on the LinkedIn event? I'm trying to see if I can. Just give me a second here. No. What have I done? All right, no, I'm not able to see, so I'm not sure if anyone is entering any questions. No comments or questions at this time, so I'm good. We're good. We don't want to miss out on anybody asking questions and not being able to answer them in the moment. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll see, and we'll make an attempt to answer it in the best way that we can. Anyone else? Anything else on layoffs before we go on to?
I wanted to add something on to what Sophia and Linda both said, following up on the journaling and the writing, because obviously that's going to come in handy for the resume, updating it, accomplishments, interviews, all those things. Yeah. But even though I think we all agree we are more than our job, it doesn't mean because we don't have the role at the moment that we're not, that set of accomplishments.
Yep.
We don't suddenly lose our skills qualifications. And the example I'm sure I've given to you three before, is how my wife and I go walking almost every day, go by a plumber's house. And when I see the plumber's van in his driveway, I would actually joke to her, "Oh, is he unemployed?" No, he's still a plumber. And that leads to the next thing. One of my very early clients, almost 10 years ago, I asked him, "So you're on LinkedIn?" "Yes." "You're trying to network?" "Yes." "And you feel good about what you're doing?" "Yes." I said, "So what have you written lately?" And he suddenly looked stunned and said, "Well, what do you mean? What have I written lately? I'm unemployed." I said, "You were a VP of marketing. So market thyself, right? Show off
Right.
your expertise." Yeah. So that's where, again, you guys inspired that story now from, keep track of everything you've done and accomplished, and
Yeah.
keep writing.
Yeah, that's how you keep yourself out there in the invisible. You want to think about remaining visible, and one of the best ways to do it is on LinkedIn. Now, you might be making comments and writing things on LinkedIn, as we were talking before we got on here today, that you may not get a lot of comments or interactions with them, but people are seeing them because they're there how many people? Over 1 billion people on LinkedIn. Less than 3% of the people that are there post anything at all
Right.
or comment, but they're all watching what's going on. So whatever you're putting out there, people are seeing in your network, and it can expand beyond your network, and that can open up opportunities for you to find work through the connections that you make on LinkedIn. So, do we want to go on to networking more in depth now? Because that's the next step. So, if anyone is on here today who wasn't on the first session that we did with this, we are going through the 7 keys that are important to address and really go in depth with in order to be able to land your leadership role. Or your ideal role that you're looking for, whether you're laid off or you're still working. And so we had covered self-assessment and self-awareness being very important, clarifying your vision and setting a goal for yourself of what you want to accomplish. And the third thing that we were going to discuss this evening is networking and mentorship. And if we can get to skills development and continuous learning, we'll do that as well too. But we want to go a little bit in depth into the networking and mentorship because I think that's really, really important right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you agree, Linda?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So we're here for 30 minutes. Started at 6. It's now 6:18. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to put your questions in. Would like to address them. But we're going to start with talking about the networking and mentorship so that we can prime the pump for you to be able to come up with your questions. So how to build a supportive network. Sophia, would you like to start off for us?
I think one of the mistakes, since when you said networking, I want to put my LinkedIn URL in the chat, encourage anyone to connect with me, because being open to new connections and being curious and sharing information is a key component of networking. So often people don't network until they're in job search, and then they view it very transactionally, as opposed to I'm building connections, I'm giving information, insight, connections of my own, because if I help others, I will ultimately be helped. It's not about what can this person do for me, or I'm not going to connect with that person or talk to that person because they're not at a level or at an industry or in a function that's relevant for me. And so I just want to encourage you to cast a very broad net, because you never know who knows who. And it's all about networking. How do you find a new dentist? How do you find a new mechanic? Yeah, ask your friends.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'd like to add that LinkedIn a few years ago did some research about jobs coming from networking, but they found that most of the jobs are not coming from the people that you know, your first degree connections, but from the people those people introduce you to, your second degree connections. So if you think, why would I connect with, my stylist or, someone like that? Well, that stylist knows a lot of people, and, you never know who someone can introduce you to. And particularly kind of back if we're talking about layoffs, when you think about everyone that you work with, not just peers and supervisors, but people that are, different levels in cross-functional parts of the organization, but also people who are subcontractors or vendors or anything like that. When you think about, all the tools and the software that you use, you've got some subject matter expertise in these as a user, and the people associated with them, they could be really good connections for you moving forward as well. So really kind of thinking about the everyone piece. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yes, everyone is a potential connection for you, and there's. I remember reading that they did some research to find out how many people you could potentially be connected to by who you know. There's an average that they've come up with, an average that each person knows at least 150 people, has 150 people in their circle. Do you know how they came up with that? It used to be.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to take a guess.
Go ahead. Go
But I'm
ahead.
wondering if you're referring to some study that was done with the mail service back in the 60s or 70s.
There may be something to that one, but what I heard was that they did the average. They took an average of how many people attends your funeral.
Oh my goodness.
What have you outlived, everybody?
And I'm not sure if that's still 150, but a few years ago it was. And so that they estimated that everybody you know has potentially another 150 people that you could get to know. So,
That's amazing.
what were
I
you
think
going to
maybe
say?
you might like this. Can I tell you about I don't know the specifics, but you've heard of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So apparently just about everybody in the world is connected within 6 degrees. Now, if you think about, Faith, Sophia, so let's say on LinkedIn, so she's your first level connection. Sophia knows Linda, so that's a second level connection for you, Faith. And a first, obviously, for Sophia. So let's say Linda knows me, so I'm a third level for you. Okay.
Yep.
Now, if we look at the video boxes, I hope you all have the 4 squares like I do for the video.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually say, well, Faith and Sophia are a pair. Sophia and Linda are a pair. Ed and Linda are a pair. And it's a chain.
Yep.
And initially, my recollection when I joined LinkedIn too many years ago, they had the ability to get in touch with third level people. And then they slowly started taking that away. And I have a feeling there were so many interactions, it may have become unwieldy. But basically, you'd have a pair of people who know each other and another pair of people who know each other. And you want to get the 2 closest. It would have been Sophia and Linda to do the matchup. So I don't know Faith. Faith doesn't know me, but one of us has a need to get in touch. So we each go to our first, who then get in touch with the 2 seconds. And that's something a lot of people don't realize is what's going on behind the scenes. And getting back to the mail, because I did go a little bit off on track on that. Somebody goes to Faith and says, in fact, I'm going to change this. I'm going to say, I go to Sophia and say, I'd like you to mail this to my friend Haresh, who lives in Mumbai, India.
Okay.
And you go, well, his address is on the envelope. And I say, yes, but we're going to put it into another envelope. I'll postage pay it for you. And you send it to someone you think stands a chance of knowing Haresh. So you send it to Faith because she lives in Toronto and you know her. And there's a lot of Indian people perhaps live in Toronto.
Yes.
So then Faith doesn't happen to know anybody in Toronto, but she knows Linda in California. Well, that is a few thousand miles closer, on the earth. So maybe she knows somebody in California, which also has a lot of people. And can you guess about how many tries it took approximately? And they did this for years, I'm told. How many times did they have to mail something? So it finally got to this guy, Haresh.
6.
6, yeah. And it was pretty consistent, too. I know it took a little time, but this is how powerful networking can be. And again, as you were saying earlier, it's not the people you know, it's who they know.
Yeah, and the thing I don't know if you've mentioned this while I was trying to figure out what was going on LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn screen, but when you connect with someone that's outside of your network, you're introduced to this third or fourth person level outside of your network. You're introduced to someone who doesn't have a preconceived idea of you. The people in your first network have put you in a box. They know you for doing certain things. But if you meet somebody outside of that doesn't know you that way, then you have the opportunity to be a whole different, answer a whole different set of problems or challenges in their eyes, other than, outside of that, if you know what I mean.
Well, the sociology research indicates the people you should rely on the most during your job search, or I will say a long and difficult job search, is not your immediate family, not even your own spouse, because of exactly what you said, Faith.
We're in a box. Yeah.
Yep.
You're in a box. They'll get tired of you if you're around them too much. And you need the people you were just talking about.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is really important about networking is a lot of people see networking as something they do at a last minute when they lose a job. But as we were saying with preparing for layoffs, you really need to start cultivating your network right away. It's something you should have been doing years ago if you're not doing it already. And it's not about being transactional. A lot of people see it as being transactional. Can this person give me a job, or can they find a way, to open up an opportunity for me? But you can start off by just sharing things with people, getting to know them on a deeper level, find out what's important to them, even asking a question like, what's your big goal for this year? What would you like to accomplish? And then you have a fruitful conversation around that. Then you've learned all kinds of things about this person, right? And you can share an article with them, a book with them, introduce them to somebody who's has similar goals to what they have. It's like getting to know people on a deeper level and getting to collaborate with them instead of just networking with them.
Nobody wants a vampire. We want people to keep us in mind. And who's going to keep us in mind? People who like us. And how do you get people to like you? It's, be nice. And that's why we have the motto for networking, give to get.
Yeah. Be a go-giver.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any questions coming up for people with regard to networking? I think we could talk about this for like 3 or 4 hours and not have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're actually at 6:30. I don't think we have any questions, and I haven't seen any come up.
But you're right. We could talk about networking forever. It's
The
just,
four of us.
Okay. Well, anything to close off what we've been talking about? We're at 6:30, and then we don't want to go too long because we don't want to bore people to death either or beat things into the ground at this point. But we will be doing more of these master classes, and probably in the next session we'll be talking more about skills development and continuous learning, and maybe go into some personal branding. So why don't we all just make a comment about what we've talked about to sum up what we've talked about today and what we're looking to do, to talk about next time.
I
Sophia?
would challenge yourself to reach out to someone that you know who you haven't communicated with recently, and just having a catch-up conversation. I did that this morning. I saw someone in my network on LinkedIn who was no longer at their prior employer. And I'm like, oh, did you retire? I think you're too young for that. Or you consulting? And she was like, let's have a catch-up conversation. So nurturing those relationships and always seeing what you can do for someone else, because it will come back to you tenfold.
That's so true. So true. Ed?
I'm going to say life is a giant Rube Goldberg model. It can be very chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
It looks, so complicated, and yet you can set things up and arrange them to increase the odds of success. And I'm just going to recommend a book by the famous career counselor Krumboltz, Luck is No Accident. How many times have you run into somebody and say, wow, that was lucky, but we ignore all the hard work that they put into it. It's like Sophia and Faith working 20 years so hard, and they became overnight successes. No, they did an awful lot and set things up to flow the way they hoped. Again, no guarantees, but we want to increase the odds. So great book, I suggest. Luck is No Accident.
Luck is no accident. And just to add on to that, I think, Ed, it's not how hard you work, it's how smart you work. It's being strategic about what you're wanting to accomplish, right? Because a lot of people have worked really hard that have probably on this, event right now worked really hard and wondering why am I not where I want to be? Because it's not just about working hard. It's about being strategic and putting all the levers in place to help you to get where you want to go. So, Linda, what are your thoughts?
I think I'll echo that train of thought with planned happenstance or strategic happenstance, which sounds like a contradiction, but it isn't. And the idea of putting yourself in places where you have a good chance of meeting people is really important, which is getting up and out and going to strategically going to events that meetings, conferences, professional association things where you can interact and make those new connections. So about that.
Right. Yes. So we will be doing another one of these sessions in May. Please stay tuned. We'll be announcing it on LinkedIn for you so that you can join up and share it with your friends and get as many people as possible in, because it's really valuable information that you can use right now. And in the meantime, what I want to say to all of you is stay healthy, stay safe, and be at peace.
Absolutely. Bye.
Night.